views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hello and welcome to Open BXRx, BronxNet's special coverage providing you the latest information, resources, services, and community efforts taking place locally here in the Bronx and virtually during the pandemic. I'm your host, Sonyi Lopez, and today is Tuesday, February 9th. Coming up, we'll learn about Montefiore Health System's new robotic joint replacement program and Rosa, their new robotic surgical assistant. Then, a group of neighbors on Perry Avenue in the Bronx recently received an eviction notice, but upon community pressure, the owner has since apologized for sending this letter. We'll learn more about this story with Joe Conzo later on. After that, Councilmembers Vanessa Gibson and Mark Levine join us to share more about tenant protections during COVID-19 and Intro 2050, a bill they're spearheading to provide the right to counsel for all tenants. And learn how to nurture your mind, body, and spirit with the Bronx Yoga Lab. Stay tuned to find out about their in-person and virtual classes. So please stick around. Open BXRx starts now. Welcome to Open BXRx on BronxNet. I'm your host, Sonyi Lopez, inviting you to get social with us at BronxNet TV on Instagram and Twitter, and BronxNet Community Television on Facebook. Montefiore Health System recently launched its new robotic joint replacement program, and it's one of the first programs in the area to utilize the new surgical robot called Rosa, which stands for Robotic Surgical Assistant. Joining us now to share more is Dr. Carlos Alvarado, Director of Robotic Hip and Knee Surgery at Montefiore Health System. Welcome, Doctor. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So first to start, can you tell us about Montefiore Orthopedics and specifically the Robotic Joint Replacement Program?
Sure. So Montefiore Orthopedics is a big multi-specialty orthopedic group where we treat everybody in every orthopedic issue. We have a long history, here in the community. And then as far as joint replacement, it's something that we've been doing for over 3 decades. And one of the busiest joint replacement centers here in the area. As far as the robotics are concerned, it's a very new program and something that I'm spearheading for the organization.
Thank you, Doctor. And you are one of the newest doctors at Montefiore. Can you tell us about yourself and your specializations?
Sure. So, as I said, my name is Carlos Miguel Alvarado. I was actually born in Mexico. I immigrated to the United States with my parents when I was pretty young. And trained all over the United States. Most relevant to us is my orthopedic training here in New York, actually at Hospital for Joint Diseases. And then my fellowship program up at Harvard, where I was there for a year, where I actually met my wife, who is also an orthopedic surgeon here at Montefiore. From my adult reconstructive training program at Harvard, I went actually down to Miami. It was important to me to work in a Latin American community. I was in Miami for the last 7 years. Doing hip and knee replacement, actually started a robotics program down there as well. After time in Miami, it was time to come back home close to family. And like I said, my wife is from the area. So we, coming to Montefiore was actually coming home for us. And I've been here now, several months, but in that short time, we've been able to do big things. And it was important to get this robotics program on the ground, and we've hit it running.
Wow. And one of those big things, Doctor, is your new partner named Rosa, the robotic surgical assistant. Can you tell us more about this surgical robot and what types of things she can do?
Sure. So Rosa is our newest member of the orthopedic team. Robotic surgery is not new to orthopedics. It's something I've been doing for the last 6 years, and it's actually something we've been experimenting with in the orthopedic world for the last decade or so. The interesting and exciting thing about Rosa is that with this particular robot, we can do our 3-dimensional planning and mapping without the use of CT scan or MRI. Historically, and all of the other robots require CT scan or MRI. which it's a great study, but it's expensive, it's time consuming, and for certain patient populations, it's not an option. Okay, so for patients that either don't have the insurance to pay for it or don't have access to that type of equipment, it basically blocks them out from using this robotic technology. The robot has already demonstrated to be more accurate and more precise, and can position the actual implants for knee and hip replacements with more accuracy. So that in turn has the potential to benefit patients at decrease complications and decrease revision rates. So what ROSA gives us is the ability to bring this technology to our patients without having to worry about insurance status, without having to worry about, are we going to be able to schedule this, this expensive study. And it allows us to basically, use this robotic technology to improve accuracy, regardless of patient background, regardless of insurance status. So it's a powerful tool for our patient population, and something that I'm really excited to be working with.
Sounds exciting and cost-effective. One-stop shop, Rosa, will be available at Montefiore. So right. People may, be curious about it, and the doctor will be happy to explain, this is my new assistant and this is what she can do. Right. I'm very curious to ask, doctor, how has COVID-19 impacted orthopedic surgeries, especially here in the Bronx?
So it's been a big impact, just like everybody. We've seen the impact in the hospital at large, and us as orthopedic surgeons, we've had to dial back our elective procedures. So hips and knee replacements is something called an elective procedure. It means that we do them for quality of life, to try to make your life better, make you more comfortable, more effective, more functional, and happier. That being said, sometimes things happen and we need to put on a different hat. And many people in the department have had to, put our passions and kind of our areas of specialty on hold for the greater good, and gone, kind of transitioned over to helping out on COVID floors. I know our residents were a huge help in that aspect. Several of our attending physicians were a huge help in that aspect, and really just trying to care for the community and the crisis as it came up. Now that we're kind of transitioning over into this life with COVID, as opposed to just dealing with COVID, but trying to really develop some type of normalcy. And we're still affected in the sense that we need to be vigilant, okay? And that means that we're doing our hip and knee replacements, we're doing our elective procedures when it's appropriate. But every patient, when they're considered for an elective surgery, they're screened, and then they're tested. And if necessary, then we do we ask them to quarantine for an appropriate amount of time. And with that, we've been able to identify asymptomatic patients and notify them of their diagnosis, but also we've been able to proceed with our elective procedures, our life-changing procedures in a safe way.
Right. And about telemedicine, doctor, that's one of the new alternatives. Well, it's not entirely new, but it's something that's been popular during the pandemic. Speaking of that, how has Montefiore Orthopedics Department continued to support their patients in preparation for these surgeries that are coming up?
Yeah. So telemedicine is not something that we did all that often a year and a half ago. It's now on the front of everyone's mind because it's a safe way to deliver care in times like this. And we've actually started something called a virtual urgent care. And what that means is that you can see an orthopedic surgeon on the same day of any issue. All you have to do is call us at our available phone number, tell them you want to be seen in the virtual urgent care, and we will set up a same day virtual visit, video, or just telephone if you don't have access to a smartphone. And the other thing that we've established is just our going forward. Any appointment that you have with me or any of our providers can be a televisit or a virtual visit. All you have to do is let the schedulers know that you prefer to do that. We're hoping to expand our virtual urgent care, but at the same time, I'm also hoping to get back to normal and seeing my patients face to face so I can give them hugs like we used to.
Yeah, I can imagine they miss you. You missed too. Yeah, safely with the mask on and everything, of course. Doctor, how can people find out more about Rosa and inquire about surgeries and contact Montefiore at this time? What is that number for the telemedicine if somebody's tuning in?
So it's much like Rosa's our one-stop shop robot. We have a one-stop shop number, 718-920-2060. This is a 24/7 answering service for Montefiore Orthopedics Department. You can reach any of our providers, including myself, and also establish a virtual urgent care appointment just by asking. And once again, there's always a live person at the other end of that phone. And all you have to do is ask. If you want to speak directly to one of the providers, you just tell them. They actually send us a message right then. It'll show up on our phones, believe it or not. We get a text message, and then we'll call you back directly.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Carlos Alvarado. Dr. Alvarado is the Director of Robotic Hip and Knee Surgery at Montefiore Health System. Thank you again.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Again, folks, for general questions and appointments on Montefiore Orthopedics, you can call Montefiore Health System at 718-920-2060. We'll be right back.
We know that people are dealing with the health crisis, but there's also a lot of food insecurity.
We're giving out healthy food options, and that's what's key here.
If you're a senior, you have a disability, they'll actually deliver meals to you.
The residents are anxious, they're worried, they're scared, they want to be tested.
When things were happening in our community and we couldn't get the help.
There's almost a presumption of criminality that attaches to your skin color.
The site will prioritize those who are at highest risk in the population.
If you feel symptoms and you'd like to visit one of these COVID-19 testing sites here in the Bronx, you may call the State Health Department's hotline.
Important to note about this site is no reservations are needed. This is a walk-in clinic.
A lot of us are out of work and looking for something to do.
We have the machinery and the skills to make large scale of these masks and gowns.
Take care of your people. It's going to go way further than we actually can understand.
Right now, employees like myself are just adjusting to the new reality.
Reporting from BronxNet, this is Trans. Welcome back. Joe Conzo Jr. is a retired FDNY EMT who dedicated his life to serving the city. He is also a 9/11 related cancer survivor and legendary Bronx photographer. Joe recently received an eviction notice along with his neighbors in the middle of this pandemic. We went out to Perry Avenue in the Bronx to speak to Joe in person. Let's check out his story. Joe Conzo, a retired FDNY medic, 9/11 hero, and cancer survivor, as well as legendary Bronx photographer, recently received an eviction notice, along with his neighbors at 3245 Perry Avenue in the middle of a pandemic.
It's kind of like a sledgehammer to your head, to your gut. You know, so many different emotions, anxiety, depression, anger, and it was just, Christmas came and left, pretty much.
Conzo has been residing here on Perry Avenue for the last 35 years. According to this notice from Glacier Equities, the real estate private equity firm that now owns the building, Conzo and his neighbors were given 90 days to move out on or before their lease expires on March 31st. New York City's eviction moratorium, meant to protect tenants from being evicted, is set to expire the very same day.
It reminds me of the 70s and 80s where landlords were burning the buildings to collect insurance, but today's just 21st century gentrification where instead of burning the buildings, we're going to buy you out and push you out.
Conzo says he is not shying away from this fight, taking after his grandmother, Dr. Evelina Antonetti, and his mother, Lorraine Montenegro, two revered Bronx community activists.
It is in my blood, but I want to enjoy my retirement. I don't want to get into the struggle. I just got over cancer, 9/11 related. How can you ask me to come out in the middle of a pandemic and look for a place to stay?
A Glacier Equity spokesperson provided a statement to BronxNet stating in part that a letter sent to Perry Avenue residents, quote, contained inaccurate information and caused unnecessary alarm. No tenants will be evicted by staying past March 31st, and we apologize for giving anyone that impression, end quote. Conzo says he believes that firm leader Miles J. Horn is not a bad person. In fact, in 2017, Horn helped provide housing to slain NYPD officer Familia's children.
I know he has a heart. So I just want to let him know that he won't be remembered for that. He'll be remembered for kicking people out today.
Reporting for BronxNet, Sonyi Lopez. Joining us now to share updates on that eviction notice and more is Joseph Conzo Jr. Welcome, Joe. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So, Joe, just to start, we saw your story. We shared it with our viewers as well, and I'm sure a lot of folks have heard about your story. You're known in the Bronx for sure. But can you tell us about your experience with receiving this eviction notice and what exactly happened?
I mean, it like in the story, it was a punch to the gut receiving a letter 2 days before Christmas saying that you have to vacate in 90 days of your home that you've called, of a place that you've called home for over 25 years. So that in itself just put a whole damper on the whole holiday season. So after receiving that, my instincts kicked in and my gut reaction, and I started emailing everybody. I emailed the property management, and I emailed, local politicians, and I just notified the world, so to speak. And only a handful of people got back to me. I was like, oh, wow. But it was important to let people know what was going on, because especially during this pandemic, none of this should be going on. And I understand about, capitalism and, people buy and sell things all the time. But when you're talking about people's lives being uprooted just because you became the new owner and you invested money into it, there has to be a better solution, a better way.
Right. And as we know, Joe, Glacier Equities, the new owner, recently did apologize for sending this letter out, and they seem to have had a change of heart. Are you and your neighbors feeling safe with their word?
Listen, I'm a young 57-year-old man born and raised in the Bronx and have seen lots of promises over the years dating back to the 60s and 70s, from politicians to community. It's just, talk is cheap, and I don't mean to put it that way, but I got to give credit where credit is due, and I appreciate the owner, Miles Horn, reaching out to me directly saying, hold on, this is not what we want. This is not how we want to run our properties. I'm apologizing to you, to the world on television, that, this is not how I run my business. And I got to give credit to him for doing that. But again, until I see things, talk is cheap. And I've seen lots of promises made to the people of the Bronx in my lifetime. And until, until actions are taken, I won't believe a word anybody says.
And Joe, when we spoke in person over that story, you compared gentrification to the burning of the Bronx back in the 70s. Can you share how gentrification has fueled the eviction and displacement of Bronx tenants?
I mean, it's a vicious circle that's been happening for decades and decades and decades. You know what I mean? Everybody has their own interpretation of gentrification. I mean, it can be interpreted so many different ways. The Hispanic people, when we migrated from Puerto Rico in the 40s and 50s, we essentially did it also, from the Lower East Side up into the Bronx, pushing the Jewish people up to Co-op City. Co-op City was built for the Jewish people, but we invaded Co-op City and they migrated further up north. But, again, it just, what happened to me was just, it was just a different form of landlords burning the buildings back in the Bronx during the 70s and 80s to, collect the insurance money and to get rid of the people that were living there. So you fast forward to 2021, we're not going to burn down the buildings anymore, but we are going to change the rent rules and the regulations and the laws that empower us as landlords or owners of cooperative buildings to push people out of color, mainly of color, that can't afford $250,000 for an apartment. For that type of money, you would invest in a house. You know what I mean? I'm a retired city worker. You know, I'm living off a pension. I'm living off a Social Security disability because of the 9/11 cancers. So my income is limited. So it's a vicious cycle that continues. And if you do some research on Glacier Equities and the owners, you know, he pretty much states that, you know, people are priced out of Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Queens. So what's the next best place? The Bronx.
Mhm. And Joe, something that we're familiar with is that you're no stranger to activism. You know, your grandmother, Evelina Antonetti, and your mother, Lorraine Montenegro, who were two strong activists in the community. Can you tell us just about the importance of continuing this work, regardless, you know, like I know you said you were tired and like it's taking a lot and activism.
Listen, you know, it's my family legacy. You know, yes, I expressed I was tired. I just want to enjoy my retirement and stuff, but it's not going to happen. You know what I mean? Because I'm the first one with the biggest mouth to step up and say something. And I get that from my mother and my grandmother, who both have streets named after them. And they're probably the only mother and daughter street namings in the entire country. You know, there's schools named after my grandmother. There's buildings named after my mother. And, you know, I took a different route. Instead of community activism, I went into saving lives and delivering babies as a paramedic with the New York City Fire Department. But, you know, as a union laborist, I was the vice president of my union that represented 4,000 EMTs and paramedics. It's in my blood to go toe to toe with politicians and people who think that they're better, or not better, but people that don't treat us Bronxites as human beings. So, you know, I use my platform.
And when we talk about, you know, utilizing your platform also, Joe, just, you know, your hopes about your relationship with this new owner moving forward, and also your relationship with your neighbors, and how important it is for other people throughout the Bronx to also advocate for their rights and understand that, you know, if you receive an eviction notice, you have rights as a person, as a human being. And, you know, moving forward, how can people also emulate that strength?
Well, let me tell you something. My grandmother had a saying, no hay mal que por bien no venga. There isn't any bad that happened that good does not come out of it. And what's come out of this for me is I've learned a whole lot about real estate laws and tenants' rights and things of that nature. And it's opened up a new world to me. What I'm hoping through this campaign of ours, that it encourages or it enlightens other tenants that A, they're not alone, B, there are groups out there that they can reach out to, and C, that they have rights. They have rights. Even though most of the rights will probably lean towards the owners or landlords, you know, just like landlords have rights. Mm-hmm. We all have rights. And, you know, we have to point out the inequities that are going on. So, you know, hopefully, you know, the message comes across that it's not just Joe Conzo, the retired EMT, cancer survivor, 9/11. It's more than that. You know, I'm just a face to the hundreds of people that received these notices 2 days before Christmas. And since your airing, I've received, you know, dozens of emails from other tenants across the borough and even in Manhattan, you know, applauding, you know, what we're doing here in this building. And, you know, so it's to enlighten people that they have rights. And that's what it's always been. I mean, the struggle from the 60s and 70s, it's always been, you know, we have basic human rights as Bronxites, as Puerto Ricans, as Black and brown people. We have rights. You know what I mean? And don't tread on our rights.
100%. Thank you so much, Joe, again for your time, and thank you for the inspiration and for, being a staple in the community as well as a hero. It will never be, forgotten or lost on us that you.
Thank you for what you guys do.
Of course. Thank you again.
Yeah.
Folks, you can follow Joe, get connected with Joe and see his work. And also stay in touch with him on Instagram and Facebook, Twitter, all over the place at Joe Conzo. He also has a website, joeconzo.com. We'll be right back.
Who's most at risk for coronavirus? People over 65, people with underlying medical conditions like heart disease, chronic lung disease, asthma, diabetes, people undergoing cancer treatment, and people with weakened immune systems. What should you do if you or a loved one is at higher risk? Avoid close contact with people, avoid crowds, stay home if you can, wash your hands frequently, learn more ways to protect yourself and others at coronavirus.gov.
Welcome back. President Joe Biden has extended the federal pause on evictions through March 31st. What does this mean for Bronx tenants? What other protections are local elected officials fighting to pass for you at a city level? Joining us now to share more about Intro 2050, a bill seeking to provide right to counsel for all tenants subject to eviction proceedings, are Councilmember of District 16, Vanessa Gibson, and Councilmember of District 7, Mark Levine. Welcome. Thank you both so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Of course. So first, to start off, I'd like to get into the extension of the eviction moratorium. It was set to expire last month, January, and it's now been extended to March. What does this mean for Bronxites, Councilmember Gibson?
So thank you so much for having myself and Councilmember Mark Levine on to always talk about an issue that we're so passionate about, right to counsel, and how we continue to affirm that affordable housing is truly essential and it should be a guarantee for so many New Yorkers. Recognizing with this new administration under the leadership of President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, essentially the federal eviction moratorium is providing minimal relief for tenants. So it essentially is just providing a delay in what we believe is the inevitable. And that is a groundswell of thousands of evictions right in the city of New York that we know will happen over the next several weeks. And so it's really important that as a city, we are prepared. If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And we really have to make sure that as a city, we are ready. We are ready with civil legal service providers, with legal representation, because at the end of the day, we know that for our borough of the Bronx, 1 in 4 households have lost their income. They've lost their jobs due to the COVID-19 pandemic. They've fallen behind rent and not really been able to meet the necessities like food, like keeping a roof over your head. And so we have to protect these residents. We have to keep them out of the shelter system, provide that stability that they need. And so by introducing 2050 at the city council and providing for a universal approach to the right to counsel law that was codified in 2017, we are sending a message across the city that no matter what zip code you live in, no matter how much is in your bank account, but if you are behind in rent, you should be entitled to free legal representation as you face that eviction.
All right. Thank you so much, Councilmember Gibson. And speaking of Intro Bill 2050, let's have Councilmember Levine chime in here and tell us a little bit more about this bill and what it seeks to accomplish for Bronx tenants.
Thank you, Sonyi. I'm really pleased to be here and pleased to be with my colleague, Councilmember Gibson, who's just been an incredible leader on tenants issues and especially on access to counsel. So working with her has really been a great pleasure. And as the Councilmember mentioned, we're facing a potential avalanche of evictions, something on a scale that we haven't seen potentially ever in the city, and maybe in the Great Depression, but could be tens of thousands. And even the current state eviction moratorium has a requirement that tenants who want to avoid an eviction file a hardship declaration. And so it's important to mention a new resource, which Vanessa knows well, a way that for free you can file your declaration online. It's called evictionfreeny.org. And some of the great activists that Vanessa and I work with are behind it. So that's a good resource for your viewers. But we want to make sure that at the time when the eviction moratorium is up, we want to delay that as much as possible. But when that does happen, that nobody, no tenant, no vulnerable tenant in the Bronx, in New York City, in anywhere in the 5 boroughs will have to face an eviction without the benefit of an attorney. And to do that, we need to accelerate the existing program that provides attorneys. And the law that Vanessa and I and others passed a couple of years ago is a game change in housing court, but it's going in zip code by zip code because it's a very big city. It's a 5-year process. And we've gotten a lot of key zip codes in the Bronx and every borough, but we want to go immediately to every zip code in all 5 boroughs, every zip code in the Bronx, North Bronx, South Bronx, Northeast, I mean, everywhere, and all 5 boroughs. And so that's the purpose of this legislation that we are pushing. It's Intro 2050. It would immediately amend the existing law for right to counsel to go to every zip code right now. And that's going to be critical for that moment when we face this avalanche of evictions so that everyone has a benefit of an attorney. We had a hearing on it about 2 weeks ago, which was great. And we just want to bring this home by passing the law as soon as possible.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Levine. And if you can, either of you can emphasize on the importance of ensuring that no cases move forward without an attorney, especially with this avalanche of evictions, as you both mentioned.
Go ahead, Vanessa.
Well, I think what we've seen by universal rights to counsel that was passed back in 2017, we've seen evictions reduced by almost 40%. We've seen a reduction in the number of cases filed in housing courts in New York City. So I think we've shown and we've demonstrated with numbers that legal representation works. We have balanced the scales of justice in housing court. We've given tenants a fair opportunity. Many of them have shown up at housing court previously without an attorney, signing stipulations, not understanding, not being able to comply, huge language barriers in housing court, not being able to meet with attorneys, no privacy space, no confidentiality. I mean, if you visit Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan housing court before COVID, it was a zoo, literally, and people were trying to figure out how to navigate this process. So we believe that, again, it reduces shelter stay. It reduces the burden on government to house a homeless family. And at the rate of saying that affordable housing is a fundamental right, and it should be recognized as such. And we have to keep families in their homes because a big part of their stability is having a roof over your head so that you can take care of you and your family. So I think the data is clear and it's shown, that we've looked at neighborhoods that are facing gentrification and displacement. And we've looked at, populations of low-income tenants and immigrant families that have really faced the harsh realities of what an unequal court system has always been for generations. So as Mark said, this has been a game changer. And I'm so proud. New York City was the first and largest municipality to implement universal right to counsel. And now we've seen San Francisco, Baltimore, Newark. We've seen Cleveland, Boulder, Colorado. We've seen all these localities follow suit and more to come. and we're seeing, conversations at the state level in Albany on a national level. I think this is a fundamental part of the quality of life that every American should enjoy. The ability to stay in your home and not feel the burden, rent burden tenants. Many of our tenants, they spend more than 30% of their income towards rent. And so we have to really change the atmosphere in which we're doing work. And by passing Intro 2050, we're not only recognizing that universal right to counsel is important, but we're recognizing in the middle of a global pandemic that it's even more important to protect tenants and keep them in their homes.
And what are the next steps and calls to action to get this bill passed? What do you urge your constituents to do at this time to help expedite its passing?
Well, thank you. We need as many co-sponsors on the bill as possible. So it's really helpful when council members hear from people who live in their district, because that's who matters. So reach out to your council member, wherever you are in the Bronx or beyond. And first, if they're on, you could ask, are you sponsoring or co-sponsoring Intro 2050 to expand right to counsel? And if the answer is yes, thank them, because people need to be thanked for taking the right position. And if the answer is no, then ask them to please get on as a co-sponsor. This really is important. That's how we know whether a bill has momentum. We ultimately passed the original right to counsel legislation because, correct me if I'm wrong, Vanessa, I think we got to like 42 co-sponsors in the body out of 51. You can't stop a bill with that kind of momentum. And we want that for Intro 2050. So check your local council member, let them know you need this to happen. And I think Vanessa said very powerfully, you have to start this work now so that we're not in the middle of a crisis in a couple of months and realize, oh no, some tenants don't have attorneys. So it's great that you're focusing on this now on BronxNet, because we want to work this out while we have a little more time ahead of this avalanche of evictions.
Yeah, we're happy to have you both, and thank you for your leadership in passing this bill and getting this bill to Bronx tenants and tenants across the board. No, I also wanted to ask you both, when are housing courts set to reopen, and what do you expect that will look like here, especially at the Bronx Housing Court?
That's a good question. So we in the city are having conversations now with OCA, the Office of Court Administration, and that really oversees all of our courts in New York State. And, we have to be very careful about our reopening plan. And I understand people need to get back to work. But while courts have been closed, a lot of the work that has proceeded in terms of other cases, illegal lockouts, and other cases before housing court have been done remotely. And I'm okay with that because I remember housing court pre-pandemic, and I don't want that return to the Bronx or any other court in New York City or New York State for that matter. So I think we have to have a real comprehensive plan. And once the vaccine continues to be expanded and many New Yorkers are getting the vaccine, and once we feel like things are back to, new normalcy, I think we really have to look at capacity. We cannot allow these courts to be jam-packed with clients and lawyers from floor to floor. It cannot happen. So we have to look at capacity. We have to look at limitations. And maybe what can happen is time frame. So if someone has to go to court, you have a certain time frame. And then if you are not able to adhere to that, then you will come on another day. We have to prevent the flow of traffic and walk-in traffic, to be honest, and provide some opportunity where there's appointment only and where we are looking at capacity issues so we do not have overcrowding. Because unfortunately, we've not been able to relocate housing courts. There is a plan, but we're a few years out of that to move some of our housing courts to other locations. Specifically, the Bronx is supposed to move to the Supreme Court building at 851 Grand Concourse, but we are years out of that. And so absent of having additional space, I think we have to look at capacity and some of the guidelines that we will put in place.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Councilmember Gibson and Councilmember Levine. Before we go, earlier we just spoke with a Bronx tenant who received an eviction notice from a new landlord in his building. Luckily, he and his neighbors knew their rights, and the owner wound up apologizing and redacting this notice, luckily. But not everyone knows their rights as tenants. If you can just remind our viewers and your constituents of their rights and their protection under the eviction moratorium at this time, that would be very helpful.
I mean, this is such an important point. When tenants don't know their rights, don't know they have support from an attorney, they can be intimidated and harassed by landlords. And often they're scared to stand up because they're worried that the landlord could evict them. And so in addition to expanding access to counsel, it is critical that we inform tenants, that we are out there building by building, even door by door, informing tenants that you have rights, that this is a new era in housing court where tenants have access to attorneys in ways they never did. And that means that if your landlord files a frivolous eviction case against you, that it's not going to go anywhere. And as for this specific moment, there's an across-the-board moratorium on new evictions now through March. But what really matters, I think, for the next few months is a pandemic-based pause on evictions through, I think, May 1st. It does require, as I mentioned, that you file a hardship declaration. It's actually not that hard. It's one form to fill out. It's available in Spanish. And there's a free service online. They'll actually fill out and they'll hard copy mail it for you. It's no cost. It's really an incredible service. And it's I mentioned the website before, but it's evictionfreeny.org. So if you are facing a possible eviction and you've been impacted by the pandemic, and let's be honest, we've all been impacted by this pandemic, if you just fill out that form, then you will be protected from eviction through May.
Thank you. Thank you both so much again for joining us today and sharing this great information with our viewers.
Sonyi, it's a great pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much, Sonia.
Thank you. Again, folks, you can protect yourself from eviction in New York State by visiting the resource provided by Councilmember Levine today. Thank you for that resource at evictionfreeny.org. Thank you, Councilmember Gibson and Councilmember Levine, for being great leaders and joining us today to share more about your Intro 2050 bill. We'll be right back.
We know that people are dealing with the health crisis, but there's also a lot of food insecurity.
We're giving out healthy food options, and that's what's key here.
If you're a senior, you have a disability, they'll actually deliver meals to you.
The residents are anxious, they're worried, they're scared, they want to be tested.
When things were happening in our community and we couldn't get the help.
There's almost a presumption of criminality that attaches to your skin color.
The site will prioritize those who are at highest risk in the population.
If you feel symptoms and you'd like to visit one of these COVID-19 testing sites here in the Bronx, you may call the State Health Department's hotline.
Important to note about this site is no reservations are needed. This is a walk-in clinic.
A lot of us are out of work and looking for something to do.
We have the machinery and the skills to make large scales of these masks and gowns.
Take care of your people. It's going to go way further than we actually can understand.
Right now, employees like myself are just adjusting to the new reality.
Reporting from BronxNet, this is Franchesca. Welcome back. Now more than ever, it's ever important that we nurture our body, minds, and spirits. What better way to do that than through yoga? The Bronx Yoga Lab provides a complete rejuvenation of all three and helps you lose weight, de-stress, and get healthy, all in one. Joining us now to share more about their partially open studios and virtual offerings are Dionne Presinal and Kerry Donegan, co-founders of Bronx Yoga Lab. Welcome, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. To start off, can you tell us about the Bronx Yoga Lab and your mission?
Sure. Bronx Yoga Lab is a 100% women and locally owned studio. We both live in the neighborhood where we run the studio. We're here in the Bronx and we offer a variety of different classes when we are fully open in a heated room. Virtually, obviously, it depends on the heat you have in your home. So we offer classes in Bikram, Yin, Vinyasa. A non-yoga option we have is HIIT. It's a high-intensity interval training done to music. It's a lot of fun. And then we also offer a series of workshops in meditation and breathing. We're doing a sound bath meditation with the Tibetan bowls. So again, our studio is located in the Bronx. It's at that crossroads between Marble Hill, Riverdale, and Kingsbridge. We sit right on Broadway at 230th Street. And our real mission for this studio is to make yoga accessible for everyone. Our idea is that yoga, no matter your shape, color, size, gender, flexibility, fitness level, you can just come. We've created a space that is calming and peaceful in our crazy urban chaotic life. And we just really want people to be able to come and have those few moments that they're here to themselves so that they can move, sweat, breathe, and rejuvenate in a safe, relaxing, non-judgmental environment. Doesn't matter your experience or your level, just move.
I love that. Thank you, Kerry, for sharing. And I wanted to ask, how have things changed over at the Bronx Yoga Lab due to the pandemic? Is the physical location still open for in-person classes? And has your schedule changed at all?
We are currently open in a limited fashion. In order to be open right now, we had to fully retrofit our HVAC system because our goal in being open is to keep everybody safe. So we installed a fresh air unit that pulls fresh air in. We installed MERV 13 filters, which any of the recycled air goes through. When you go into the heating duct, it also pulls in through a air scrubber, which is a UV light technology that also cleanses the air. And we are keeping all of our mats a minimum of 6.5 feet apart. We are not allowed still to have traditional classes because the city is still not allowing that, but we have devised a new way after passing our Department of Health inspection to get people in the room where they can come in and do their own self-guided practice. There is always a staff member in the room to guide and make sure that people stay safe. The pandemic was really, really tough. We were able to pivot to a virtual model, and bless our members because we just have had such incredible support from the people that were with us pre-pandemic and who joined us during the pandemic into our virtual classes. Living in New York, space is a challenge virtually, so it can be a little bit hard, but we've really worked with people to make their space work for them. In the summer, We offered some classes outside in the park, and that was really fun. People really took to that, and we'll hopefully even be doing that again next summer. But we're still here. We're hurting. The landlord really hasn't worked with us in any manner, shape, or form. So it's still a struggle, but we strive every day to give back to our members and to reach out to the extended community, because the Bronx has been so hard hit. And as you said at the beginning in your opening, it's a time where you really just need to focus on yourself and rejuvenating your body, your mind, and your spirit. And we're hoping to be able to do that for people.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Dionne, in order to have you chime in as well, could you tell us some of the benefits of yoga, especially during these times? And additionally, what is the connection between mental, physical health and yoga?
So some of the benefits, as far as it helps you build your immune system, especially now during a time where many people are getting sick. It's important to have a healthy immune system. The fact that we add an element to heat helps you detoxify, it helps you sweat. We're also strengthening our bones, increasing flexibility, helps us improve our sleep, a sense of calmness, clears our mind, leads us to a broader sense of hope with everything that we're watching in the news these days. An overall sense of fitness, being flexible, muscular strength, having endurance, and going back to your heart, improving your circulation. So there's tons of benefits, and they all chime in mind, body, and spirit, just coming into and seeing yourself. So especially coming into the studio, for people that are practicing at home, might look at themselves in the mirror, but in the studio we have mirrors, so you're constantly reminded that you kind of forget what's happening everywhere else, and you're looking at yourself and reminding that, you know, you are your safe place, and we kind of hold all our answers inside. Yeah.
Yes. No, I love that. And while you're both speaking to me, I'm like taking deep breaths, because I do that, and I know that's a part of yoga, right? Like,
absolutely.
Breathing and being present.
I know that Kerry mentioned it, but are all classes for all experience levels, and can beginners that have never done this join your class as well?
Absolutely. All sizes, ages are welcome. I mean, we've had someone 73 start, and someone as young as 8 started practicing here, and they're 17 now. So it's open to everyone.
And what should people bring to a yoga session, whether they're coming in person for the limited classes or online and joining your yoga session?
So you want to wear comfortable clothes that you feel moving in. You want to bring a yoga mat, towel, water, and if you don't have those things, you can rent and purchase them here. An open mind, being open to just trying it out. I mean, we've all had our first class,
our first something, riding our bike, or even just a job, right? In itself, trying something for the first time, we're scared, but
being coming into the room and having the wonderful community that we have, everybody's welcoming. We see everyone that sees a new face, members that have been here for a while, they see a new face and they welcome them. Like, how was your first class? How do you feel? So
besides coming in, you create a family and friends here.
I love that. And let's say somebody is tuning in from home and they've never quite done yoga before. If each of you can just share with us a yoga tip for someone who wants to start getting into yoga but isn't sure how. What are some things that folks can start doing at home?
Just jump in. Don't be scared. It is not a performance. Yoga it's been around for centuries, and the beauty of it is you don't have to be super fit, super flexible to do it. Yoga really is for everybody. It's for everybody and everybody. Everybody can find a way, and just sit back, breathe. Don't feel like you have to make your body fit into a specific shape and it has to look like, you know, the picture that you see online, because that's not what it's about. It's about finding yourself in your own body, allowing yourself to move while you breathe, and just leave whatever expectations you have behind, because you really don't know what's going to happen, and it's going to surprise you on your journey. Dionne, what else?
Well, I actually wanted to go back to what to bring. I forgot to mention a mask. That's super important. You have to wear a mask.
In person.
Yeah, in person. Not at home.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the new ones that we can't forget.
Since we're not wearing it now.
But before we go, I also wanted to share with our viewers, how they can find out the schedules or, what classes are going on. How can people find out more about the Bronx Yoga Lab and what they can tune into next?
Okay, well, we're located at 5500 Broadway, which is right on the corner of Broadway and 230th. We have a website, our newly launched website. It's bronxyogalab.com. In order to register for classes, if you're not in our system, you can go on the web to a self-registration web app, which is wellnessliving.com/schedule/Bronx Yoga Lab. You can also, for those non-tech people, can just email us at bronxyogalab@gmail.com or call us 718-562-3656 or follow us, Dionne, you know better, the Instagram and handles.
Bronx. Our Instagram is Bronx Yoga Lab, as well as our Facebook. We post our schedule daily, and our weekly schedule is posted on Sunday. So you're welcome to follow us and receive healthy tips from us.
Yeah, and then once you're in our system, you'll get a newsletter every week as well.
Maybe you can help us close out with maybe like a mindful meditation that we can do together right now. If you ladies can assist me with how I can do that. Like if I need to take a breather, working from home can sometimes be a little stressful. We have families at home, with their children through remote learning. We have a lot of situations, a lot of essential workers in our communities. How can we all just take a step back and a breather at this time?
So let's end with a breathing exercise. In a comfortable position. I'm sure we're all probably seated. You're welcome to close your eyes so that you're less distracted with things around you and you start to bring your attention inward. Take a deep breath in through your nose. Open your mouth and exhale out. Let's do it one more time. Deep breath in. Open your mouth and slowly exhale out. Inhale through your nose for 3, 2, 1. Hold for 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 3, 2, 1. Last one. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Hold for 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 3, 2, 1.
Woo! Thank you so much for that. Dionne, Kerry, thank you so much for joining us today. That was just a little preview of what you can get at the Bronx Yoga Lab. Thank you, ladies, again for joining us today and for that mindful meditation and breathing technique.
Thank you.
Again, folks, for you at home, Bronx Yoga Lab is located here in the Bronx at 5500 Broadway. You can start nourishing your body, mind, and spirit today by following at Bronx Yoga Lab on Instagram and Facebook. Also, you can visit their website at bronxyogalab.com. That's all for our show today. I'm your host, Sonyi Lopez, wishing you and your family safety and wellness now and always. Thank you for tuning in.